Hey folks, welcome back to another Opponent Master video. So as some folks requested, right, again, we are going to do a lot more of these videos for a bit newer players or returning players, because there's, I would imagine, quite a few right now, right, because of the anniversary and all that stuff. And today we're going to talk about battling. All right, so the battle system in Opponent Master is actually pretty interesting and, in my opinion, really fun. So yeah, there's a lot of very intricate stuff that you have to like think about and keep in mind, and obviously a lot of that is in the team building part. Maybe I'll do another separate video on team building again, right? But yeah, we'll talk about team building in a separate video. But this video we're just mainly focus on battle. So the battles of Opponent Masters, they are 3v3, right? /9 or whatever, but there's always just going to be only three, at most three opponents that you're fighting at the same time, right? There might be different layers of opponents, but usually it's just three over here. There could be another three behind them after you take them out, another three behind them after you take them out, but usually but yeah, the most you could fight at once on the opponent's side is 3, and the most you could have on your team is 3. And you should always have 3 on your side, because why are you not having 3 Pokemon on your side, right? That makes no sense. You're just kneecapping yourself. So, let's talk about it then. So, first of all, in terms of battling, a lot of the stuff you do is like preparation, right? Like preparation is honestly like half the battle, right? So in terms of preparation wise, there's a few things you have to look at, right? First of all, again, team building, which we'll talk about in a separate video, but also look at what their weaknesses, right? What their weaknesses. For example, this stage weak to Psychic. Obviously, Psychic type will be much better. Psychic or super effective has a 2 times, multiplies your damage by 2 in this game, right? Which is a lot. Which is a lot, right? So for example, if you have for example, if you're using like a fire type striker that does 1,000,000 damage off type, right? But you have a psychic Pokemon that does like 700,000 off type, you generally would want to use that psychic one, because on type against psychic weak, that 700 is going to be 1.4 million, right? Which is obviously higher than the 1 million. So again, depending on the stage, you should throw in units that are generally super effective against it. Not always. There are cases where the super effective isn't as strong as the non-super effective, although those cases aren't super often, right? So anyways, looking at some other things. So first of all, there is always a recommended level on the screen. Usually tells you the general difficulty, although it's not very accurate at all in my opinion. There's also a strength thing over here, right? And there's like a strength level that you should bring against the opponent. That's how much strength you have. And then if you look at the area details, it also shows you, sometimes show you some boss hints and stuff, right? It tells you focus on paralyzing the Machamp. Do you have to do it? No, honestly, I don't think I ever do it. But yeah, if you go to boss details, again, this shows you what Pokemon they have. If you click this button over here, it changes and tells you what type of moves the opponent has. So the opponent has rock type moves, fighting type moves, ground type moves, steel type moves, and normal type moves. So make sure your tank isn't someone who's like weak to any of those types, right? So yeah, for example, don't bring like I don't know, ground weak tank against these opponents, right? So yeah, speaking of tanks or whatever, how do you choose who the opponent targets, right? Again, we're mostly talking about single player over here. Rules are different in co-op, but in single player, what you do is you go to edit and then you click tactics, and then you could switch the targeting, right? Switch the targeting around whoever you want, get targeted first. Usually you want the unit that has the most bulk stats, right? Just HP, defense, special defense, depending on what the opponent does, right? If the opponent is physical, right, you obviously want higher physical defense. If the opponent especially want tanks with higher special defense generally, right? There's a lot of other considerations. For example, heals, defense, special defense buffs, right? And stuff, damage reduction if you have that as well. So yeah, just basically pick your tank. Personally, in this scenario, since the opponent is physical, right, Bianca's definitely the better option over here, right, for tanking. But Sabrina also has, reflect that could reduce physical damage taken as well, which helps the entire team in tanking and all that, right? So yeah, again, we'll talk about team building in a separate video, and then yeah, basically you could go in and fight the stage, right? So quick go, obviously. So there's a few things that you should probably change in the settings if you haven't already. Also, first of all, the move gauge thing, you should probably buy the extra move gauge, right? Make sure you have like 6 move gauges. The move gauges are pretty important. And yeah, so there's a few things that you want to do in the settings. This is how to change the settings. So all right, you could choose if you want auto on or off. I generally do not recommend auto because auto is kind of bad, right? And you could choose your battle speed and all that stuff. You could choose if you want to skip the battle animations, all that stuff, theme skill animations, opponent HP bar, turn this on, right? For all. Target marker, turn this on as well. Action order, I would turn this on. I think this is very, very, very important. Action order, right? So so action order is basically this, right? If you look at the right side over there, it says next. It shows you who's using their moves next, right? If you have it off, then it is very, very awkward, and you don't know who's using what move, when, right? This is good, so you can plan when you want to use your moves and sort of, know or calculate the amount of turns you have until your sync move, all that stuff. So, anyways. In terms of moves, there's generally a few types of moves. There's your, your items, trainer moves, all that stuff, right? Stuff like Dire Hit All. Your trainer moves are these, right? They have like special names and stuff. These, if you look at the, it says 1 out of 2 over here, so that means I only have 1 more use, right? It has a total of 2 uses. So there's a certain amount of uses for these moves, right? For example, a move like Side Beam over here, this has an unlimited amount of use. Generally, these are attacking moves. There are cases where they aren't, right? You press this, it does something. It has 2 bars over here. It means it costs 2 move gauges down here, right? Costs 2 move gauges to use. There are also a combination. For example, Reflect over here, it costs you 3 gauges. And it has 2 MP, right? MP is like move points or whatever, right? So you can only use it twice over here unless you get, a MPR or whatever on that. And same with Snatch, right? Same with Snatch, same thing. And the last move we're gonna talk about is the one that you're seeing on the screen right now. This is called the Sync move. These are very, very powerful generally. So that's the middle button over here. After 9 moves, you get to press that, right? So there's always a countdown to that, and then usually it does a few things, whether, some do a lot of damage, some, for example, Alakazam over here turns into Mega Alakazam. Some, I don't know, some don't do damage at all. There's like 2, there's like Eevee and Xerneas, they don't do damage at all. They buff your team's stats. Xerneas buffs your special attack, speed, and special defense to max, and then Eevee buffs like attack, defense, special attack, special defense, evasion, accuracy, speed by 2. All right. So there are sync moves that don't do damage. So, anyways, let's exit that and go in there again. The other thing about sync moves is after you use a sync move, I probably shouldn't have exited. After you use a sync move, you'll see this icon. It's that sync icon, and then there's like a number beside it, either 1, 2, or 3. That's the amount of sync buffs you had, which means how many sync moves you've used, right? And those sync buffs are very, very good because the great thing about sync moves is, yeah, it does damage, yeah, it does whatever, this or that. But one of the most important things why sync moves are so good is after you use a sync move, it buffs your whole team's damage, right? Buff your whole team's damage 50%. So that's always good. Every time you use it, another, you get another sync buff, right? And that's why getting your sync moves off is very, very important. That's why the next thing we're going to talk about is also very, very important. So generally, when you're battling, you want to make sure. Here's what you don't want to do. All right. Here's what you don't want to do. This. You don't want to, hyperspace hole, just spam like hyperspace hole, or maybe like buff them first and spam hyperspace hole. But yeah, obviously you do want to buff your units before you use the moves, but you don't want to use one move and just like spam it from like your strongest attacker. What you want to do is over here, right? What you want to do is use 3 moves on the same turn from everyone on your team. Even if it's your tank who does like no damage, you want to use their moves as well, right? You want to make sure everyone gets a move in. All right, so for example, there we go. We queue up 3 moves before the opponent queues up 1. So this is good because I guess Lear's not the best example because he has sync move countdown. That's because if you're just spamming with 1 unit, right? If you're just spamming with 1 unit, then as you can see, we got 3 more moves queued up before the opponent uses 1 move, right? If you're just spamming with 1 unit, then what happens is it's going to take you 9 turns to get your sync move off. If you're spamming moves with every single unit on your team, again, it's not a very, very good example because Lear has sync move countdown. But if you are spamming 3 moves or queuing up 3 moves per turn, right, you could get your sync move on the 3rd turn, right? 3rd turn versus the 9th turn, huge difference. I see a lot of people, especially newer players who don't do this. I mean, it's fine. I didn't know about it. Like, it's nothing to be ashamed of. I didn't know about it before, right? And it's just very, very, very powerful because you get your sync move 3 times faster, right? And obviously, again, sync moves are very, very powerful, right? So even after like you're done buffing, even after you're done buffing with your like even with your supports, right, or tanks or whatever, you should still try to queue up as many moves as you can, generally, right? If you don't have the move gauges, throw in something else, right? It's so that you can, again, get your sync move in much earlier, right? Which is going to be pretty key, right? Because again, 9 turns in comparison to 3 turns, right? That's kind of a big deal. So anyways, as for some other things that we do want to talk about, and also that's why like move gauge management is so important, right? Because you have to make sure every turn you can queue up 3 moves, right? Every turn you queue up 3 moves with your team, right? That's why, again, move gauge is very, very important. And for those who are wondering, what does speed do in this team, or in this game? What does the speed stat do? That's basically a move gauge, right? It controls how fast the move gauge regens. The faster speed you have, the faster the move gauge regens, right? So yeah, again, that's what speed does. So yeah, have good move gauge management. Make sure you're able to queue up 3 moves every single turn, right, with your team. So you could get your sync move every 3 turns instead of every 9 turns. So you're getting your sync buff 3 times earlier, right? So again, that's very, very, very helpful and good, right? So anyways, now let's talk about let's talk about, I guess, speaking of sync moves, let's talk about EXs, right? Just a quick, I guess, rundown of what EXs do. So EXs all do the same thing, 6-star EXs, right? And to get it, you have to 20 out of 20 your 5-star sync pair, and then use 50 champion spirits on them, and then they turn into a 6-star EX. So there's 3 types of 6-star EXs. There's strikers, there's techs, and supports. All the supports do the same thing, all the strikers do the same thing, all the techs do the same thing, right? So strikers are pretty, pretty easy to understand, I guess. Strikers just, usually sync moves only target 1 opponent. Striker EXs, sync moves targets all 3 opponents, right? All 3 of them. And the great thing about this is there's no damage. There's no damage split, because what usually happens with AOE moves, right, is, for example, like a Heat Wave from a Charizard or Earthquake from Garchomp. The damage is split, so instead of doing 100% of your damage of that Earthquake's damage to each target, what's happening is you're doing only 50% of the Earthquake's damage to each target, right? So with Striker EXs, it makes their sync move don't split the damage. It's 100% damage on each one of those targets. That's why it's really nice. And then the tech ones, right? The tech sync pairs, or tech EXs, that's not a one that I have EX. Tech EXs, for example, over here, right? What happens to their 6-star EX is that their 6-star EX, it increases their sync move damage by 1.5 times, right? That's an extra 1.5 times multiplier on their sync move. That's why all the top sync nukers in the game are all techs, right? Like at the top, like 20 are like techs, right? In terms of just single target sync move damage, right? That's, again, it pretty simple as well. 1.5 times over here. So the support is the one that some people like have some issue understanding sometimes. The support 6-star EX buff is basically, again, remember how we talked about there was this sync move, the sync buff, right? After you use a sync move, right? Again, it buffs 1.5 times damage. So support EX buff, what it does is only for the first time you use your sync move in the battle, right? That one buff turns into 2 buffs, right? So you get 2 buffs straight up on your first sync, right? On first sync with that unit, right? And instead of 1, you get 2, which is why support EXs are incredibly powerful, right? So yeah, that's basically how EXs work, right? So is there anything else we could talk about? I guess we could talk about terrain and weather, right? Terrain and weather are very powerful. At the moment in the game, the accessible ones that we have are hail, sandstorm, sun, rain for weather, and then for terrain we have psychic terrain and electric terrain. I'm pretty sure those are the only 2 terrains at the moment, right? There are opponents with grassy terrain, but we don't have a unit with grassy terrain yet, unfortunately. So what these weathers do individually, right? So sandstorm doesn't do anything outside of you have a sandstorm and then you take chip damage, right? Because in the main series, certain types benefit from sandstorm, especially defensively, but not in this game. It's just sandstorm, and then you take chip damage. The reason why sandstorm is good though is because there's a lot of units that have multipliers or passives that are based on sandstorm. For example, if you look at Cynthia over here, right? Cynthia has stuff like Surging Sand 3 powers up moves by 30% in Sandstorm. Sandscreen powers up your special defense by 50% during a sandstorm. Sands of Time charges your move gauge faster in Sandstorm. And then the same thing with Hail. Hail is basically the same thing as Sandstorm in this game, except that looks different, I guess. And yeah, again, same thing with that. It doesn't actually do anything other than chip damage, but there are units that have passives that are based on hail, right? Invigorating Hail over here, for example, right? Powers up moves during a hailstorm. Hasty Hail charges move gauge faster in a hailstorm. So the really good and broken ones are Sun and Rain, because they have they have, outside of the fact that they could trigger a lot of Sun and Rain passives, they straight up just have a 1.5 times damage boost to fire and water type moves in this game, right? So yeah, that's just why Sun and Rain are incredibly broken in this game. There are, again, Sun-based passives as well. Sun and Rain-based passive, for example, Charting Sun over here, extra 60% damage buff, while in Sun, on top of still having that 1.5 times buff, which is a separate multiplier, right? Which is, again, why it's very powerful. And then, again, same thing with Rain. So Psychic Terrain and Electric Terrain, these two are more like Sun and Rain, right? Because they also do buff your team's electric and psychic type attacks by 1.5 times, right? Which is again very, very, very powerful. That's why, you know, psychic, like all these terrain and weather teams are like among the top teams in the game. And they also can trigger psychic terrain or you know, terrain related passives as well. So yeah, those I guess are just the terrains and weather. They usually last for around one sync cycle, right? Assuming you're triple queuing every turn, right? You queue up 3 moves every turn. It lasts almost a sync cycle, right? If you do have weather extenders like Groudon or Kyogre, it does last around, you know, 2 times that almost, right? So something like that. And let's see, anything else? Okay, we could talk about some other stuff. I guess more intermediate stuff, right? So here's, all right. Let's talk about turn denial. I think it's better just to throw in like something else in here. Maybe Mewtwo instead of Hoopa, just because not that Mewtwo's better unit, it's easier to explain. So, all right, here's a thing called turn denial. Actually, no. Turn denial is, it's better if I show it on a 3v9, because although you could do it on 3v3, it's just not, you know, you just can't abuse it as much. All right, so this might be a bit better to understand, right? Against 3v9. So there's 9 opponents over here, right? So basically, what turn denial is, which is what we're going to talk about. Turn denial is you take out the opponent's one of the sides, usually the sides, right? Because usually sides have much lower HP than the mid, right? So when you're triple queuing, you could take out the sides so that the sides queue up a move, but they don't get to use the move because by the time they get to use the move, they're already dead, right? So then what happens over there is that they queued up the move, but their sync move countdown didn't go down, right? However, on this end, you use 3 moves, right? Use 3 moves, the opponents use 0 because their opponent fainted before they could even use their move. So their sync move countdown is still the same for the whole time. And then that way you could get multiple sync move countdowns on your side before the opponent could even use a single move or get their sync move countdown by, down by even 1, right? Which in this case means you're going to get more sync moves in before the opponent gets their sync move in, right? So you're going to get more sync buffs, your team's going to be stronger, you're going to do more damage before the opponent even gets to, hit you, right? So I guess it's probably easier shown or demonstrated than talked about. So we're going to use, again, this example with the Xerneas full force battle, right? So turn 1, we're just gonna, just buff and stuff. So the pincer over here is gonna use a move. What we're gonna do over here is we're gonna go ahead, Moonblast that, is that soccer throw? I don't know, the blue guy, right? We're gonna Moonblast the blue guy, and then we're gonna power trip it as well, just to make sure it gets taken out. So look at the sync move countdown. So it went from 5 to 4 because it used a move, right? And they dodged the attack. Okay, obviously they can't have them dodge the attack. What even is 95 accuracy? No, it's 100% accuracy. Wait, did they have evasion buffs? Anyways, whatever. Let's try that again. But yeah, as you can see, every time they use a move, their sync move countdown goes down by 1, right? They how much does this guy start at? It starts at what, 5 sync move countdown over here, right? 5 sync move countdown over here, and over here we're gonna Moonblast this opponent. Again, we're gonna kill power trip as well. Oh, that's +1 evasion. No wonder. And what happens over here is, as you can see, the sync move countdown is still 4. Since Marnie took that out, their sync move countdown didn't go down because they didn't get to use their move. They went down. So what we get to do is we get to use another, set of moves over here before the opponent gets to use their moves. Same thing over here. And now we got our sync move up. And the opponent hasn't even used more than 1 move over here. So their sync move countdown is still at 4. However, our sync move countdown, we already got our first sync in. Our first sync in, and the opponent hasn't even, still at 4 sync move countdown, right? So we go ahead and sync over here, and there we go. We got our sync buff in, our first sync buff in. which is again very, very, very nice. Power trip over here, and we took that out. That's another 3 free move cues, right? That's 3 sync move countdowns for free against the opponent. We're probably not going to take this out over here, which is why, again, this is mostly going to be, you know, focused on this on the sides, right, when you're trying to do this. So yeah, there we go. So kill power trip over here, and they're gonna do their thing. They're down at 3 sync move countdown, but what we're gonna do over here is we're gonna spam moves over here to take out these sides, right? So you can see there. Probably gonna take all these out as well, right? And then we got our second sync move in. So we already had 2 sync moves in before the opponent could use 1. They're still at 3 sync move countdown, right? They're still at 3 sync move countdown, keep in mind. And this should probably finish it off over here. Alright. With the poison thing sucks, but you guys get the point. You guys get the point, right? The opponent's not doing anything, and we're just getting free sync move countdown, basically. Alright? So that's turned out, and I think one more thing that we could probably go over is called it's called quad queuing. This one's a bit more difficult because it's slightly RNG based. So what this is generally, well, we'll try not to take them out this time. We're not going to turn them out this time. We're going to let them, you know, do their course, right? This is, we're trying to get an extra move in after our sync. After our sync move, we're trying to get an extra move in, right? So again, it's 3 turns to get our sync move, alright? Because we're getting 3 sync move countdown every turn. 3 sync move countdown every turn. Alright. And okay, here's the trick. So after, over here, don't click anything. Just use your sync move and then queue up moves with the other 2. And what you're trying to do here, after you sync, is spam click so you can queue up a move before the opponent does. So then you get, that's why I couldn't get it up, you couldn't queue the thing up, right? Which is unfortunate. But yeah, so if you don't queue it up, the opponent gets an extra queue in before you. So that means, I guess it's better explained in champion statement. So that means the opponent's gonna have their second sync move in before you could get, or the opponent's gonna get their first sync move in before you get your second sync move in, right? So again, what you're trying to do is just to spam click that after that was not the best stage to try that out on. After you sync, so you could queue up 3 moves while the opponent only, queues up their move afterwards. That left side, right? The left side. So the left side only queues up the move afterwards, right? So anyways, let's try it over here. This might be a bit better. Here we go. Let's speed this up a bit. It's taking a while. I'm not like trying to win or whatever. It's just queuing up random moves. Alright, so after this, we don't want to queue up any more moves with anyone. We're just going to wait for the sync. Just wait for the sync to come in. Well, hopefully you don't get a... Oh, cool. Alright, so you queue up the sync move here. You queue up 2 moves with these 2. Right? You have the sync move in with the Lunala. And then afterwards, you spam click. Or spam tap, whatever. Spam tap a move. Ah! Again, this is not, you know, it's hard to tap it in, but basically, if you do it successfully, right, you would be able to queue up 3 moves before your opponent queues up 1 move. In that case, you could get 2 turns later, you'll have your second sync move up, and that should be exactly where that should be the exact turn right before the opponent uses their sync move, right? So the turn before your opponent uses their first sync move, you're already using your second one, which, especially if you have, you know, some EX, tech, nuke, or whatever, right? That's going to be very, very powerful. Very, very good chance of taking out the opponent before they could even use a sync move, right? So anyways, That's maybe this one, I guess. Hope you all enjoy it. Let me guys think in the comments down below if there's anything else. You guys want me to talk about, you can let me know as well. And have fun, folks. Hopefully this was helpful for some people. Maybe you guys already knew this stuff, but maybe, maybe you don't, right? Who knows? Have fun, folks, and I'll see you guys in the next one.